I come from Austria, and we have some nice ideas about love. The biggest thing what you can do for a girlfriend is to pick up an Edelweiss by yourself. And so last night I dreamed I climb up to the mountain over the rocks and I find the Edelweiss. When I found it and I tried to get it, broke the stone under my feet. So I fall, down, down, down. And at the very end, alarm. I waked up. I look at my hand. The finger was still together, but no Edelweiss. It was a dream.
Freud's interpretation of the meaning of dreams was based on his larger view of human nature. He saw us as basically selfish animals driven by aggressive urges and the desire for pleasure. We learn how to repress our animal impulses as we grow up in order to get along in society, but we never totally conquer our primitive selves. This animal self, which contains the core of the psyche, Freud called the id. The ego and the superego are later developments that arise from the need to survive and adapt to the surrounding social environment. The ego is our rational self. The superego represents societal pressures and tells us what is right and wrong. The superego is frequently in conflict with the id. Freud saw the psyche as a battleground, with the various personality components engaged in ongoing struggle. Feelings are being repressed if the ego or superego become too dominant over the id. To Freud, emotion unexpressed often led to problems.
What Freud says in the interpretation of dreams, in saying that every dream is a fulfillment of a disguised wish, is that our meanings are disguised, that we don't know for sure what things are significant. But we need to find ways of discovering how they may be related to our desires, how what we do unconsciously, without thinking, may be related to our fundamental desires, maybe even expressing those fundamental desires without our being aware of it. Once one opens that question, it's not up to then some scientist or philosopher to come on and say, they don't really mean anything. No, the issue is then, how are we going to make sense of things, events, words, activities that we used to not bother about? And now we decide, yes, I'm going to bother about that. I'm going to try to see what that means about my life or about my friend's life or about our relationship. And psychoanalysis in Freud's hands opened up that question.
In the interpretation of dreams, Freud laid out a formula which could make sense of even the most confusing dream. His theory relies on a part of the mind he called the censor, which edits our dreams. If we dreamed about the literal fulfillment of desire, he said, the powerful emotions this would create would wake us. The censor transforms the dream content to disguise its true meaning. Freud called this transformation of desire dream work. It is composed of a number of processes. Displacement shifts emotion from one idea to another. Condensation fuses together multiple thoughts into a single symbol. Along with symbolization and projection, dreamwork components join together to change and redirect dream thoughts and images into acceptable forms. After the censor has completed its dream work, the ego reorganizes the otherwise bizarre components of the dream so that it has an apparent meaning called the manifest dream. The process of dream interpretation involves decoding the manifest dream content to discover the real hidden meaning of the dream called the latent dream. Freud insisted that dream life is as important as real life. Stripped to bare essentials, a dream unanalyzed was to Freud an unopened letter. In every dream, there is always another story. There is more than meets the eye.
I can talk about a dream that I had 47 years ago, which is as vivid in my mind as it was when it happened, and changed my entire life. I dreamed I was lying in a field, a beautiful field of flowers, with my baby, and suddenly there appeared a black monster or horse, a bête noire, which is a black beast in French, and this beast was trying to trample us and to kill us and to ruin us. And I realized noir is also Schwarz in German, and I was married to a man, the father of my child, by the name of Schwarz. And I knew then I had to get out of this marriage. I just couldn't possibly stay in it. I never thought of it before until I had the dream, and then I knew out.
The Freud family moved to Vienna when Sigmund was 4 years old. He was born in Moravia in 1856, the eldest of 7 children of Jacob, a Jewish wool merchant, and his wife Amelia. The Freuds were poor during most of Freud's youth, but always sacrificed to give him the best possible education. Young Sigmund was an exceptionally gifted student.
His parents think that Freud's work is the most, little Sigmund's work is the most important thing that goes on in the apartment. Everybody else be quiet. No piano, no noise. Little Sigmund is working.
The brilliant young Freud went to the University of Vienna and trained as a neurologist. After school, he began a career in research, but lack of money forced him to start a small medical practice. At the age of 30, he married Martha Bernays, the daughter of a distinguished German Jewish family. In the Victorian Austria of Freud's youth, psychology was still in its infancy. Mental illness was thought to be caused by a malfunction in a body fluid. Psychoanalysis did not exist. Dreams had only just begun to lose their mythic quality as messages from the gods or warnings of impending disaster. Times have changed, yet reports of premonitory dreams are still common.
I had this dream not long ago that reveals to me the death of my mother. I was just dreaming that I was in the church with my mother, and we were singing and glorifying the Lord. And suddenly, there was a man covered with blood. He burst into the church, and everybody was running. I was running. To my greatest surprise, my mother was standing, waiting to know what was going on with this man. And I was so frightened, so scared from the dream, that I opened my eyes and I woke up. And 5 days later, I received a phone call that my mother had an accident and she died.
By the end of the 19th century, consciousness began to be seen as a rational process. It was also believed that behind all psychological functioning, there had to be a physical origin, a biological cause for every mental effect. Freud, too, viewed the human brain in mechanical terms, somewhat like a steam engine. He saw the brain as a complex neural network in which neurons build up electrical charge and, as a result, require discharging. Freud envisioned that dreams occurred during discharge.
Freud comes at a period in the history of Europe where there has been this tremendous successful liberalism, this great industrial revolution, the apparent triumph of science and ideas, and at the same time, this increasingly powerful feeling that something is amiss, that things aren't working right, that aggression, violence, and hatred are still major issues.
The late 19th century brought an uneasy mixture of hard science and speculation to attempts to understand the mind.
I was so helpless.
A young Austrian woman named Anna O had been seeing Dr. Joseph Breuer for severe hysteria. She suffered from speech disorders, found food repulsive, and experienced frightening visions. Breuer tried hypnosis and discovered that when in trance, Anna recalled traumatic memories and her symptoms disappeared. The talking cure had been invented. Breuer recounted the case to his friend and protege, Dr. Sigmund Freud, who was fascinated. After 14 years of collaboration, the two men published Studies on Hysteria. From this work emerged the field of psychoanalysis. After publication, Freud increasingly focused on the sexual nature of the psyche. Breuer and Freud parted ways 1 year after their book came out, the first of many Freud friendships to end bitterly.
When Breuer showed himself to have reservations about various ideas promulgated by Freud, particularly those impinging on the realms of sexuality and so on, Freud took umbrage, and I would read it as Freud having engineered, in effect, a falling out between them.
Freud's theorizing about the sexual origins of mental illness was scandalous to polite society.
I think Freud was very brave in his emphasis on sex. He pointed out something that needed to be pointed out, which is that Victorian culture was, at least in its formal sense, very prudish sexually, and distorted human relations through, the way that sex was ignored or suppressed or limited, and that lots of odd things went on around the edges in terms of human behavior to avoid those prescriptions, and lots of behavior was a result of shame and family conflict and so on that revolved around sex.
Okay, I'm in my kitchen making a meal, and I'm dressed in this little T-shirt and jeans, and this older man comes in my apartment, and he tells me I'm dressed inappropriately. I feel very embarrassed. He then gets on the floor and he tries to make love to me. I get very scared and very upset, and I run out the apartment, down the stairs as he's after me. I'm now on the street, and I'm trying to call my boyfriend, but he's not there, so I'm still very scared, and I run downtown to my girlfriend's house, but she's not there. She just got married and gone on her honeymoon. I feel unsafe, and I feel I have nowhere to go, and then I woke up.
Freud could find a sexual reading for almost any image that occurs in dreams. It is this emphasis on sexuality for which he has been most criticized.